United States Constitution, a sacred document that forms the basis of modern America, is the supreme law of the land and the foundation of our government. In America, we talk a lot about freedom, and as we see it, this is the text that guarantees our freedoms. The freedom to speak our minds, to worship who we choose, and to protest against our government. But there's one freedom that's more controversial than any other: the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms.
All units be advised, we have a pursuit in progress. Units on non-essential calls directed to clear and stand by to assist.
Gunman, one of the worst massacres in U.S. history.
Are you serious? The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
America's love of the gun is enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. There are almost as many firearms here as there are people. But gun violence and mass killings have devastated communities across America. Victims of gun violence want stricter laws and more control on who can buy and carry guns in America. But not everyone agrees.
Never fight if you can avoid it. But when you must fight, don't lose. And when nothing less than freedom is at stake, we fight.
The National Rifle Association is the most powerful gun lobby in the world. It's campaigned relentlessly against any changes to America's gun laws, including measures designed to make schools and college campuses safer. But guess what? Not everyone thinks more laws means less violence. I'm Antonia Okafor, graduate student at the University of Texas, former Democratic voter, and card-carrying NRA member.
I'm proud that I bring a different voice and face to the NRA and to defending our freedom. And I'm proud to call the National Rifle Association one of the greatest civil rights organizations in the history of the world.
I'm an advocate for campus carry, the right to carry concealed weapons on college campuses. I lobbied the state of Texas to give students the right to bring a gun to class. I never used to be a gun enthusiast or a member of any Second Amendment groups, but I experienced the reality of being preyed upon just because you are physically smaller. I wanted to be able to protect myself. I've left Texas behind and come to Illinois, a state with some of the strictest gun laws in the country and a staggering record of gun violence. I want to convince people here that guns aren't part of the problem. They're part of the solution. Or maybe they convince me otherwise. We're traveling along Route 66, nearly 4,000 kilometers of historic tarmac that once stretched from Los Angeles to Chicago. In the small towns that pepper America's highway, life is lived at a slower pace. Many people in Pontiac, Illinois, hark back to an era they see as America's golden age. For people at this classic car rally, there really is no gun debate. They're united in their passionate support for the right to bear arms.
Favorite amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
Right to bear arms.
Second.
Basically, I like all of them. The Second Amendment validates other amendments.
What comes to mind first?
Second.
Right to bear arms, I guess.
So the second.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'd have to go along with that.
Okay.
There's too many. I love them all.
But a couple of hours down the road, the situation changes. This is a city where gun violence has blighted countless lives, where gangs fight block to block for control of the criminal underworld, a place whose history was forged at gunpoint. And today, the source of Route 66 finds itself in the crosshairs of a war of words over gun laws.
Look at Chicago. What is going on? Is anybody here from Chicago? We have to send some of you to Chicago, I think. What's going on?
This is a city at the heart of the gun control debate in America. Don't let this beautiful backdrop fool you. Homicide rates are through the roof, crime runs rampant, and people have different opinions on how to stop the epidemic of violence.
The gun crime statistics in Chicago are almost unbelievable. We arrived just after the 4th of July weekend, which was marked with more than 100 shootings in the city. So far this year, there have been more than 2,000 shootings in Chicago, 400 of them fatal. Another person is shot on average every 2 hours and 19 minutes. 4 out of 5 people involved in these shootings are Black. More than $100 million has been spent so far on medical care and autopsies for shooting victims. The vast majority of homicides are never solved. Most of the shootings in Chicago happen after dark, away from the bright lights of downtown. I'm headed to the feared South Side, where even the police are reluctant to enter. Many people here have lived their entire lives in violence and poverty. Strangers are not welcome. But I've contacted a former gang enforcer who's agreed to be my guide to one of America's most dangerous neighborhoods.
Like right now, you're in the heart of the holy city. It's the heart. Everybody's tucked in on their porches, tucked in real tight, waiting on the opportunity for somebody to come and try to shoot, or so they can shoot or fire back.
So I see a lot of children outside. Do they always stay with them, or is it something?
Those are not children. Those are young killers.
Huh. Wow.
You know, 12 and up. 12 and up young kids out here holding guns right now. We in hostile territory. We're in a hostile environment. Something can happen at any given moment over on this side of Pulaski.
Derek Brown joined the Vice Lords when he was 13. His gang ruled a large area of the West Side known as the Holy City. But he says the situation is even more lawless now.
It's 10 times worse now because there's no structure out here on the streets. There's no leaders. Like, they're still Vice Lords, but they're not together. They're against each other. Every block is against. Every block just against one another. So everybody's divided into small cliques, small groups.
Derek takes us to the block from where he used to run his chapter of the Vice Lords.
So I was selling drugs. Anybody get too close, I shut them down. If they didn't shut down, we had to fight. We had to go to war. It's because of me. So my influence play a big part of what's going on out here right now, even with the violence. So I have to do all that I can to just stop this madness in which I helped create.
After spending time in prison, Derek left behind the gang life and spent 2 years homeless before turning his life around. But so many young people on Chicago's South Side have followed his path, seduced by a life of gangs, guns, drugs, and violence. I've come to Inglewood, one of Chicago's notorious neighborhoods, to talk to some people who suffer the consequences of the gangland lifestyle.
We still haven't found my cousin's body. You know, we had a memorial for her. You know, they cremated her head. They haven't found her body yet. And I don't think they ever gonna find her body. But, I mean, my kids and my little cousins and stuff, you know, they traumatized, you know, about what happened. They won't even sleep in the dark. You know, they don't want to sleep alone. You know, it's just a lot going on. Like, who will actually cut, you know, a young woman's head off her body? Like, who would do, what sick person?
Everybody want to uphold an image. It's upholding an image. And it's like, once I go out and do this, and then there go that image. You just gave me what I was looking for, the attention.
If you ask me, it's basically too late. Because who you know, somebody done killed your cousin, now y'all finna get cool. After you done took somebody, it's over with. It's a war now. It's done. Like, it ain't really nothing we can do about it. It ain't really nothing we can do about it.
It's harrowing to hear all these everyday stories of horrific violence. But what especially touches me is hearing from innocent children. For them, the violence that lurks around every corner has been normalized.
They shoot people.
They shoot people? Who shoots people?
The boys.
The boys? Are they boys you know, or are they boys that are kind of far away and then at nighttime?
No,
down over there? Wow.
One day it was a lot of gunshots.
One day it was? It's not usually like that, or?
It is, but it's on the next block, not our block.
Not your block. Well, that's really good. So when that happens, what do you guys do?
Me and my sister, we sleep. We just do what we regularly do.
You do? Is it because you're used to it now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In Chicago's South Side, crime and punishment are never far away. There are several jails close by, including the largest in the United States. 100,000 inmates pass through the Cook County Jail every year. But it's not so well served by hospitals. Many shooting victims have to make a 45-minute journey to Northwestern Hospital. Often, they don't make it. So a group of medical volunteers have decided to take matters into their own hands.
So there's a lot of information to dealing with any kind of trauma wound, but the main thing is pressure. So if you were shot in your arm, I would want to know if it went in and out. Is there another wound on the other side? I would apply pressure. I would keep it on. And if this became soaked with blood, I would apply another t-shirt on top of this without taking this one off.
Okay. Amika has dealt with many shooting victims, but she doesn't believe more regulation is the answer.
I mean, guns are an American problem. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are other countries with a similar population that do not arrest and imprison people nearly as much as America, and do not shoot people nearly as much as America. It's not unique to Chicago. It is how this country, was founded, built on a lot of violence. I'm much more of an advocate for us getting folks mental health services, for us getting people resources in communities that don't have them. That to me is much more important than gun control, solving the underlying reasons of why people shoot people.
But what are the underlying reasons why people shoot people? I've come to ask a group of mothers who band together each day to walk the streets of Chicago's South Side. With music, lawn chairs, and a barbecue, they want to do more than watch. They want to be seen.
Kids aren't being raised anymore. They're just being allowed to get taller. They aren't actually being raised, though. And that's where I come from. I come from a place where, someone loved me enough to raise me. I don't think the change starts so much with the young people. I think it starts with parents and with adults. I think it starts when parents decide that they're going to be parents again, when adults decide they're going to be adults again, and they're going to stop being afraid of the 15-year-old with a gun. That's still just a kid. These are kids. They need guidance. And if you're too afraid to guide them, then the problem is you. It's not them. They're not the problem. It has to become, we have to step up and rebuild community, and we have to rebuild what we used to be. There was a time when black folks raised everybody else's kids, so now why can't we raise our own?
My time in Chicago's South Side has shown me how easy it is for criminals to access weapons. And this is despite Chicago's gun laws being some of the strictest in the country. There are still no legal gun shops or shooting ranges within city limits. And the debate over where the guns are coming from has focused on one small gun store in a leafy Chicago suburb. A 2014 University of Chicago study said more than 1,500 guns traced to crimes in Chicago in the previous 5 years came from trucks, far more than any other local dealer. But gun advocates dispute this study and say authorities should focus on illegal gun supply, not penalizing lawful gun sellers. I've come here to meet one of those advocates. Earlier this year, Rhonda Ezell sued the city of Chicago to allow gun ranges to be built within city limits.
The place that we are now here, this place has been protested against for years. You know, we come out, we support because the city of Chicago wants everyone to believe that Chuck Gun Shops is responsible for the violence in the city of Chicago, and that's just not true.
A lot of people on the gun control side would say that the problem is that there's more guns on the streets, so more guns equals more violence. Would you agree with that, and why?
I'll tell those people that the more gun control that they impose on the law-abiding citizen does nothing to stop the violence in the city of Chicago. We have laws on the books right now that could be used federally to prosecute anyone that's a felon that is caught with a handgun.
So Rhonda, I see that you brought your lovely granddaughter here. What do you tell her about guns?
She's actually my range buddy. She's actually shot several firearms. She's shot a rifle, several rifles, and a pistol as well. So I educate her on the use of firearm safety because she needs to know that she may have to, at some point in her lifetime, find herself defending herself. And if that's the case, she will be ready. She will be ready.
The profile of gun rights activists is changing. We're not all old white men anymore. Okay, some of us are. But I'm living proof that the Second Amendment cause is being taken up by a younger and more diverse demographic.
I didn't vote for Trump because I wanted him to advance limited government. I voted for Trump because I wanted him to kick people in the ass. Period. Period.
On the other side of Chicago, this Turning Point Conference is getting young conservatives together to discuss what matters to them.
The Second Amendment's the most important amendment we have. I love saying that because it just pisses liberals off. But it protects every other freedom we've got. You talk about Chicago. I think you know, a few days ago there was a video that went viral. An 8-year-old boy walking around the streets of Chicago with a gun. An 8-year-old boy. Now that's incredible, but right away Rahm Emanuel and all the liberals went crazy and said, see, there's a problem with guns. I mean, how did that 8-year-old boy get a gun? Where are his parents? This incessant drive to make everything about guns is what's led to a lot of the violence in Chicago.
What do you say to those who say the Constitution is outdated, you know, especially the Second Amendment? What do you say to those people?
Most young people, when you look at the polling, they think our rights come from government. The First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third and Fourth. They don't understand that those rights are there to protect us from government. In fact, the Second Amendment is, when you think about it, it's our last line of defense. If the government comes after you and tries to shut you up, or the government comes after you and says you can't hang with those people over there, if the government comes after you and tries to impinge upon all of your rights, the final ultimate right you have is your gun. to protect you and your rights from government. If that's old-fashioned and that's no longer in vogue, then we're screwed as a country.
Illinois may have some of the strictest gun laws on the planet, but it's also home to one of the main manufacturers of pro-Second Amendment apparel. Grunt Style is staffed mainly by veterans of America's armed forces. They make everything from t-shirts to bulletproof vests, and business is booming.
Do you ever get accused of promoting violence?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Can you expound more about it?
It's usually starting with our logo, because our logo has, cross rifles on it, and it says "This will defend." So people wrongfully assume that we're promoting violence, guns, and shooting. These are Springfield muskets from 1792 that were the weapon that won the War of 1812, or our Second Revolution.
So do you believe guns and freedom are inseparable?
No, they're not. Now, at this point in time and our place in history, absolutely. But you can ask that 1,000 years ago, it wouldn't make sense. You can ask that 1,000 years ago, from today, it's not going to make sense. It's a tool right now that symbolizes, and it's the tool that we use to guard those freedoms.
One man's symbol of freedom is another man's symbol of violence and mayhem. I've come back to one of the South Side's most violent neighborhoods to talk to gun control advocates who are holding a protest. I have a feeling we're not going to see eye to eye.
This area has been plagued by guns since the 70s, and it's unfortunately becoming even more advanced as we see the lethality of the weapons increase.
So you would say that the problem is the guns, the problem isn't violence?
No, I would say the problem is violence. It's accelerated by the easy access to firearms.
Easy access. So say we were able to get all the guns out, then you think that that would lead to a decrease in violence?
I think it would lead to a decrease in deaths. I think that we have to address the violence on some other issues, but I also think that with the easy access to firearms, it's more readily the answer instead of trying to work things out.
So when you talk about gun control, perhaps we should be talking about maybe gun accountability. I'm not for taking away anybody's gun, especially our responsible gun owners, right? However, what I don't respect, especially when it comes to organizations like the NRA that are so big and bad and powerful, is that you do a great job of speaking up for the rights of gun owners, but you do a terrible job of talking about what happens on the other end of those guns when they get out of control. So you want everything to be free, and you don't want anything to be marked, you don't want anybody to be licensed, but when those guns, see, I don't know if you're protecting the people or if you're protecting the guns.
It can seem as though Chicago's gun problem is unsolvable. During my time in this city, I've been so touched by the shocking stories of people who've lost loved ones to gun violence. But at the same time, I found many people who agree with me that law-abiding citizens should have access to guns to protect themselves. The gun debate in America has taken on the characteristics of a political campaign, with huge media campaigns, attack ads, and dubious backers on both sides. That's because both sides believe winning this debate is literally a matter of life and death.
Sometimes, in all the sound and fury of the gun debate, it's easy to lose sight of the real issue here. Chicago's problems are not going to be fixed by the tightening or loosening of gun laws. They go much deeper than that. One thing I've learned from my time here is that the problems are not going to be solved by the politicians in Washington. It can only be solved by the steadfast hard work and dedication of the people.
Maybe we need to change the conversation around guns in America. Maybe, if liberals accepted we're never going to give up our guns, we could work together to find community solutions to the violence that plagues our inner cities. Derek Brown, the former gang enforcer for the Vice Lords, has rejected his past life and beliefs, and has put all his efforts into his community. Every day, he teaches at-risk youth to channel their negativity into boxing, which keeps them off the streets and away from the temptations of gang life. If he can change, maybe we can too.